You know, those personality quizzes we all took way back when.
Yeah.
The ones that told us if we were more masculine or feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like picking kittens over sports somehow revealed some deep truth about who we are.
Right. Well, today we're going deep on a study from the 70s that really changed how we think about all that.
That's right. We're going to be looking at Dr. Sandra Bem, a psychologist who, she kind of revolutionized how we see masculinity and femininity.
Okay, so before Bem came along, how did people see gender?
For a long time. Pretty simple, really. Think of it like a line.
Okay.
On one end, super feminine, on the other, super masculine. And you were supposed to fit neatly into one or the other.
And the idea was, if you were a man, you had to be tough and stoic,
Yeah.
right? And if you were a woman, you had to be nurturing, emotional.
Exactly. And if you didn't fit, well, it wasn't seen as a good thing.
Not ideal.
But then Bem's research came along and challenged that whole idea, her big discovery. Masculinity and femininity, they're not two ends of one thing, they're two separate things.
Hold on. You're saying someone could be both strong and compassionate, assertive and caring, no matter if they're a man or a woman.
That's it. And that's where androgyny comes in. It's from andro, meaning male, and gyn, meaning female.
So an androgynous person.
They can be both masculine and feminine depending on what the situation calls for.
That makes so much sense. It's like having more tools in your toolbox. You know, imagine a tough negotiation at work. You need to be assertive to get your point across, but you too also compassionate to understand the other side. That's androgyny in action right there.
Perfect example. And to actually measure this, Bem developed something called the Bem Sex Role Inventory, the BSRI.
Okay, this is getting good. Tell me about this test.
So it's a test where you rate yourself on a bunch of traits, but these weren't just random traits.
Right.
You asked people what traits are desirable for men, what traits are desirable for women. So the BSRI is measuring not just what traits you have, but how society sees those traits.
That's a big difference. It shows how culture plays into all this. So how does the test actually work?
You get a list of these traits, you rate yourself, then you calculate your masculinity score and your femininity score separately. But here's the key. You subtract the masculinity score from the femininity score. The closer to zero, the more androgynous you are.
Okay, I'm with you. So what did Bem find out when she gave people this test?
Well, it kind of shook things up. She found way more people scoring as androgynous than anyone expected. It challenged that whole idea that everyone fits into these neat little boxes.
Do you have any numbers to give us an idea?
Oh, yeah. In one study, almost 30% of men and over 35% of women scored as androgynous. More than a third of the people. It wasn't just a small thing.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
So what kind of impact did this have on, like, the field of psychology?
I mean, it really turned things on their head. It wasn't just about a new test. It was about challenging everything people thought they knew about gender. It suggested that maybe, just maybe, matching your gender to your sex isn't what makes you happy. Maybe being able to draw on both worlds is the real key. And it wasn't just about how individuals felt, happy or not. It really got people thinking about gender roles in society as a whole.
Oh, yeah. Like, it gave people permission to just break free from those old expectations.
Exactly. And we saw real changes, right? More women in leadership, more men taking care of kids, just more awareness that gender isn't so black and white.
It's amazing, isn't it, how one person's work can have that kind of ripple effect. But it wasn't all easy, was it? I mean, I've read some critiques of Bem's work.
Of course, yeah. Any big new theory is going to get challenged. Some researchers, they wondered if maybe it wasn't about being both masculine and feminine that gave you an advantage. Like maybe it was just having those masculine traits, period, that helped people succeed, since those are the ones society values more anyway.
So even if you're super caring and compassionate, if you're also assertive, that's what gets you ahead.
Yeah, that was the idea. But it's not that simple, is it? It's not like all masculine traits are good and all feminine traits are bad.
Right, right.
Later research, they expanded on Bem's model, and that's where we get this four-dimensional model.
Four-dimensional. Okay, break that down for me.
So instead of just masculine and feminine, now we have positive masculinity and negative masculinity, and positive femininity and negative femininity.
Examples. I need examples.
Okay, so being assertive and confident, those could be positive masculine traits, but being aggressive, domineering, that'd be negative masculine.
Got it.
And on the feminine side, being compassionate, nurturing, those are positive. But being overly dependent, self-sacrificing to a fault, those might be negative.
So it's not just about being androgynous, it's about which kind of androgynous you are.
Right, exactly. Positive androgyny, that's the key. Those are the folks who tend to be well-rounded, happier, more adaptable.
Makes sense. It's like having all the tools A and D, knowing when to use each one. But all this was decades ago, right?
Mm.
Is the BSRI even relevant anymore with all the changes in society?
That's a great question. And researchers, they have looked back at Bem's work to see how it holds up today. One study in the late 90s, they gave the BSRI to college students down south.
Huh.
And guess what? Almost all the original traits still worked the same way to tell the difference between masculine and feminine. Only two changed, childlike and loyal.
Interesting. So maybe those aren't seen as feminine as much anymore. Or maybe it was just because of where they did the study in the South. Different parts of the country might be different.
And another study looked into that. This time, they went to an urban university up in the Northeast. The results were totally different.
Oh, really? How so?
For the women, only one masculine trait was rated as more desirable for men. Just masculine itself, how about that? And for the men, they only rated 13 out of the 20 masculine traits as more desirable for men.
Wow, that is different. What about the feminine traits?
Okay, so the women, they only rated 2 traits as more desirable for women. Feminine and soft-spoken, and the men. Only 7 feminine traits were rated as more desirable for women.
It's like those old clear-cut lines are getting blurry, at least in some places.
It shows you how much our culture shapes how we see gender, doesn't it? But it also makes you think, are these changes because society is really changing? Or are people just more aware of the research now? Maybe they just wanted to seem more egalitarian.
Yeah, could be. Trying to give the right answers.
Even the researchers said that maybe people guessed what the study was about. But no matter what the reason, it shows that the BSRI, it's still useful, but you gotta remember, things change. Culture changes, regions are different. It's not set in stone.
Which is good science, right?
Yeah.
Always adapting.
Exactly. But even if the BSRI needs tweaking, Bem's work is still hugely influential in how we think about gender, relationships, all of that. Her book, The Lenses of Gender, it goes even deeper.
And she also wrote An Unconventional Family, right?
Yep. That one's about raising kids in a more gender-free way.
Oh, tell me more about that. Always interested in different approaches to parenting.
So Bem, she challenges all those traditional ideas about how to raise boys versus girls. She says, let kids develop all their abilities, no matter what the stereotypes say.
So, not pushing boys into sports and girls into dolls. Let them explore whatever they're drawn to.
That's it. Let them be themselves without all those preconceived notions of boy things and girl things.
Makes sense. Reminds me of a friend of mine. She's raising her son to be comfortable with his emotions, showing affection and all that, which isn't always encouraged for boys.
Perfect example. Bem's ideas in action. Let boys be fully human, just like girls.
It's not just parenting, though, right? Her work has also had an impact on education.
Oh, absolutely. Gender equity in schools, making sure girls have equal opportunities in STEM, fighting against bias in textbooks, it's all connected.
Creating a space where everyone feels valued, no matter their gender.
Exactly. And her work has even gotten people talking about how to deal with gender-based violence, discrimination, all that in schools and in society.
It's pretty amazing how one person's research can have such a wide reach, touching on so many different parts of our lives.
It really shows the power of ideas, how they can actually change the world.
But all this talk about Bem's legacy, her impact, it's all great, but I want to bring it back to our listener, to you. What does all this mean for your life right now?
That's what matters, isn't it? Think about it. After learning about Sandra Bem's work, do you still see gender as just one line? Or do you see all the different dimensions now, the potential for androgyny?
It's really amazing how much things have changed, even since the 70s when Bem was doing her research. I mean, those old quizzes, masculine versus feminine, it seems so basic now.
It really does. Bem opened up this whole new way of looking at it, not about fitting into boxes, but about all the unique things that make you, well, you.
And she gave us the words to talk about it, too. Androgyny, the 4 dimensions, positive and negative traits. That stuff's still with us today.
For sure. And not just how we see ourselves, either. It's changed how we think about education, raising kids, even the media.
You mentioned that book, An Unconventional Family, about raising kids without those strict gender roles. Tell me more about that.
So in the book, she's basically saying, hey, why do we have all these rules for how to raise boys and girls? Let's be more flexible, let kids develop all their abilities, forget the stereotypes.
Instead of pushing boys towards sports and girls toward, dolls or whatever.
Yeah. Let them figure out what they're passionate about. Create a space where they can just be themselves without all those shoulds.
It makes you think, I was talking to a friend the other day. She's raising her son to be comfortable with his feelings, showing affection. You don't always see that with boys.
There you go. That's Bem's ideas in action. Let boys be whole people, just like girls.
And that's not just about parents, right? This stuff applies to schools, too.
Big time. Gender equity in the classroom, equal chances for girls in those STEM fields, fighting bias in textbooks, it's all part of it.
Making sure everyone feels like they belong, that they can achieve anything no matter what their gender is.
You got it. And don't forget, BEM's work has also pushed people to think about the tough stuff, like how to stop gender-based violence, discrimination, all that, in schools and in the wider world.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, how one person's research can have this huge ripple effect. It touches everything.
The power of ideas, right? They can change the world.
But let's be real, this is all about you, the listener. What does it mean for your life? Right here, right now.
That's the big question, isn't it? After all this, do you still see gender as just this one line? Or do you see all the different dimensions, the possibilities of androgyny?
What qualities do you value in yourself and in others? The ones that really matter, whether they're masculine or feminine or whatever.
And how can you bring more of those qualities into your life, your relationships, your work? It's worth thinking about.
We hope this deep dive has given you a lot to chew on. Keep exploring this whole world of gender. It's always changing.
Sandra Bem gave us a starting point. Now it's up to all of us to keep the conversation going. Challenge those old assumptions. Create a world where everyone can be themselves.
And if you want to learn more from Bim herself, check out those books we mentioned, The Lenses of Gender and An Unconventional Family. They'll really make you think.
Full of amazing insights, they'll challenge you, make you see things in a new light. It's all about understanding this whole human experience, right? The good, the bad, the complex.
So, as always, dear listener, keep asking those questions, stay curious, and keep diving deep.